Okay, that was the first movement of the, oh, I'm sorry, did you get it? Yeah, okay, that was the first movement of the cantata. We're going to go to the fourth movement. Now, in the second and third movement, what usually happens is a smaller group of singers, very often a soloist, will continue in various ways. Sometimes the soloist will take a recitative, we'll talk about that later on. That's a narrative. Basically, it's telling the story. Or they'll sing a duet or a solo melody, which is called an aria. We'll do that some other time next year. We're going to jump now to the fourth movement of this piece, which is the tenor chorale. And one of the most spectacular, this is much easier work for you, so they're much less complicated than the first movement. I'd like to point a couple things out, which are really kind of fun. First of all, there's this lovely melody that the violins and the violas play at the beginning. And we'll just start with that, and I'll go back for it. Just elegant, right? Start singing. Okay? Now, while that's playing, there are two things going on that are really cool. And I'd like you to direct your ears, so to speak, to the bass line. It's not just the violins that are playing now, but the cellos and the basses are playing just straight notes. Yom, boom, 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 in the background. Listen to that little counterpoint. It's a counterpoint, too. It's a sort of a polyphony of kinds, a simple one. But that relationship between that little elegant melody on top and that bass line on the bottom is part of what makes this kind of cool. And we don't hear that right away, maybe the first time we hear it. Can you hear it? At home, turn up your subwoofers. Right down the scale. That goes a little faster, right? That bass line is called part of a continuo. Continuo means literally what it means, it continues. Right? Dong, dong, dong. Often accompanied by a harpsichord or an organ, who makes stuff up as it goes along, by the way. So part of Baroque style is that very often solo lines, or especially the harpsichordists, will actually not have the part written out. They'll just have symbols. Okay, I want this chord and that chord, and you can do whatever you want there. For example, in the Brandenburg Concerto, a lot of what that guy was playing, he just was kind of making up as he went along. He knew what chords he was supposed to play, but whether he went or dum deep dum dum deep or dum deep dum dum, that was up to him, and he probably played it differently each time. We don't hear that so much in this version of it, but very often that's part of it too. So that starts us out. Now, the frosting on this cake, after the relationship of that solo line and that bass line on the violins, is when the tenors come in. The tenors are this group, that's not an N, that's an R, the higher men's voices, right? And they are the only people singing in this movement. And they just simply sing the melody that we heard in the first movement, but then in the first movement it was very long. While the other one going, all the other stuff was going on down here. Now it goes much faster. We hear it much more distinctly, as if the melody has sort of come out now into the open a little bit more. And this little violin viola melody dances around it. But the way those two things fit together, and I love what Camille, I'll never forget this phrase that the writer of our book uses. He says they fit together with miraculous ease. And the reason he uses that is because you would never think that the melody is supposed to come in there. It comes in right in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of this complicated motion of the violins and violas. He doesn't let the violins and violas finish their phrase before he comes in. He comes in right at the middle, and in the most unlikely place, it seems, but as soon as you hear it, it's perfect. It's astounding. The guy's ear is just amazing. So listen to that motion. Listen to when these guys come in, and you'll notice here on the page, this is page 140, the melody has just, the violins and violas have just gone, bom, ba, ba, dum, be, dum. And then the voices come in, la, ti, da, da, da. Why there? Right? Not going, la, ti, da. That's where you expect it, right? Let the violins and violas finish, and then let's start singing. But Bach is too clever for that. He brings it in right in the middle so that there's this sort of curious, typically Baroque, right, uncertainty of where the phrases begin and end. There's kind of counterpoint that's surprising and yet perfectly aligned. It's really quite amazing. Let's listen to that now, and I'll just try to keep my mouth shut. It probably won't be successful. Back to the A section in a second. And again, strange entrance. That makes sense, right? And that made sense, right? Waiting for them to finish. An apparently simple piece, fairly short, and yet remarkably ingenious. And it's just a little twist of where you start the voices turns into something, again, practically miraculous. That those voices fit so well together in such a strange place is really, that's Bach. Bach once wrote a piece for, I don't know if you can imagine this, to give you an idea what kind of a genius this man was. You know what the staff is, right? Let's imagine this is a staff. How many of those are there? I guess I need 5 of these. Okay. For 2 instruments. And this was just a melody. When you get to the end of the piece, and all of a sudden you see, I don't know if I can do this, a treble clef upside down on the bottom. And what does that mean? That means if you take this music and you set it on a table, and you're playing a flute on that side, and I'm playing a flute on this side, I'm playing these notes, and you're playing these notes upside down, and it's a perfect polyphony. And then, but my note, this D, if you look at it, is not a D, it's a G. In other words, playing them up, they're actually different notes when you look at them upside down than when you look at them right side up. And so you play like this, and it's a perfect piece. Now, anyone can think like that is beyond me. I mean, the guy's an unbelievable genius. That's beside the point. Not totally beside the point. Okay, let's go on to movement 7. And the last movement of one of these cantatas, very, very often, is a chorale. I mean, the chorale melody is what we've heard a couple times already. Ya, da, di. But now the chorale is sung very simply in 4 voices: soprano, alto, tenor, bass. In a term that was in chapter 1, but we didn't look at it very closely. It's called homophony. We've heard polyphony, which means different voices, or poly actually means many or several, playing at the same time. This homophony means like homogeneous is what happens to milk when you blend it together, right? So what that means is that all 4 voices are singing different notes, but in chords at the same time. So they're not going to, they're singing different notes, but they're singing all together, like a hymn, for example, and that's what it sounds like. So this is, and it's a kind of climactic way of finishing one of these pieces. Quite short. You just hear the melody, and let me quickly find it.